Thank you very much for that introduction. And yes, I'm Dave Cutting. I'm from the longest school I've ever met, Electronics, Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, from sunny Ireland. So this is a bit of a weather shock coming over here, as you might imagine. Any day it doesn't rain in Ireland, we call summer. So we have a couple of those every year. So the title of my talk, I was invited to come and give a talk based on some of the interdisciplinary work that I've done. And this is an extended version of some of the work I've been doing around the UK higher education scene to try and get the message out about, I think, the importance of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary working. So the first thing, my title is Flying Our Own Dog Food. Does anyone get that reference at all? Yeah, yes. Oh, one person does, right? The Microsoft line of eating your own dog food. Microsoft, when they were a relatively young company, had a phrase internally which was, we need to eat our own dog food. What that meant is we need to use our own products. We can't be developing products for one person, using products from another superior competitor. We have to live and breathe our own stuff. So that's where this idea came from. And I mean, I must admit, so interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary is a hot topic at the moment. I can barely move for invites to conferences which discuss it around a lot of the internal UK and European-wide higher education community. People are constantly talking about it, and it gets you thinking about, is it important? Does it actually matter? And really, does it reflect the real world? Because my view, and this might well people disagree with me, is that we are a factory of knowledge. We take students in as clueless blocks, and we form them, we shape them, and we kick them out, and we kick them out into industry, we kick them out into jobs. So realistically, we're turning people in. So does this reflect the real world, interdisciplinary working? And I think it does. I think it does, based on my time in industry. But this is where I think we have a challenge, we have a problem with higher education. And I'm going to present my view on it now. Feel free to disagree. So I think the world around us is interdisciplinary. I think more than ever, we move in a complicated society where people of all different walks of life are required to deliver one thing. You know, my shopping arrived, and actually it's a long chain of people and skills, from a farmer to a truck driver to an internet specialist. But are we, as educationalists, representative of it? And I don't think we are. If we draw a graph, not to scale, and we think about on the bottom axis the breadth of knowledge, and on the up axis, the y-axis, the depth of knowledge, I think that we don't really help ourselves. So we start off at primary school, little kids running around, and we learn a lot of things, but to a very small depth. We cover a lot of different topics, but not to a great amount of depth. As we move through the educational system, we might go to high school. Till we're about 16, we start to specialise our subjects. We choose our secondary education. Then 16 to 18, we're focusing down even more. Certainly in the UK at this point, you're focusing on 3 to 4 subjects in a great deal of depth now, but certainly not the breadth we had. Go to university, pick one topic, and we're getting higher and higher up the educational food chain. And if we zoom out a little bit, we go from a degree perhaps to a master's degree. Again, we're focusing on something. And then we reach the pinnacle, the terminal degree, do a PhD, and it looks like that. My view is, and this is perhaps just my PhD experience, is I am the world expert on something nobody else cares about. I am the world expert on something so thin, but I know it in a massive amount of detail. Get me at a party and I will tell you all about it, all right, and so you're begging me to stop. Now, what I think this means, and what I have coined, is this actually is a hierarchy of ignorance. Cutting's hierarchy of ignorance. Okay, it's a thing, all right? It's going to be focus everywhere. We absolutely know that there is a world outside of our field, but we rarely actually engage with it. We know that in the real world, teams working around our field have to interact with other skills. I mean, most of us who are educationalists have some foot outside of academe. We consult, we do things, we talk to colleagues in industry, and we're very aware that the projects that they deliver actually involve teams of specialists with lots of knowledge. And then we go back to academia, where we shut ourselves in our schools and in our little offices, and we focus on our very, very specific way to work. And in fact, what we've done is we've spent many years siloing ourselves in. We've climbed this ladder, this educational achievement ladder, and I've become less and less interested in the world around me until I focus on my little bit of it, which hopefully I know pretty well, but I don't work very well enough. So we talk a good talk about interdisciplinary work, but how well do we actually follow it? And I think the more we know our individual field, the less we know around it. And if you think about it, if I was talking about I do computer software, I found myself, came to sunny Florida and found myself trapped in my room, needing a boat to get out of it, you know. And I was thinking, before the conference started, what is there to do? You know, if we could have an app maybe that tells you things you can do in Orlando when you need to swim there in order to get there. But even if we were doing a simple app that just had a list of activities like that, actually, I'm a software engineer, okay? I build things, I can program it, no problem. But even that would require a huge amount of other fields. If we were doing this as a commercial product, I'd have designers, I'd have psychologists doing user interface, I'd have researchers working out what way to go, I'd have marketing people out trying to make deals with SeaWorld to let me know that actually we can get money back on that. The real world impact of a project like this, small app, is not just programming, it's not what I teach. I can teach people to build the app. What I can't do is teach them all of the skills and the surrounding things that are required in order to do it, which is increasingly what we need to do. So even a simple app would require an awful lot of interdisciplinary knowledge. So where am I on my hierarchy of ignorance? Well, I'm at the top. I have achieved maximal ignorance. But I've become aware of this. So I've tried to change myself, and I've tried to give our students and give our staff the opportunity to genuinely become more interdisciplinary over time. One of the challenges that I've found is that, again, this comes back to we talk a good talk, and I'm speaking very much for myself here at Russell Group University in the UK. Our funding structures do not help us work interdisciplinary. Our funding structures work that we apply as a school, we guard our money as a school, and we'll bite you if you try and take any of our funding pot away from us. We apply to things like physical science research councils who fund things in our specific field. If I went to them and said, oh, actually, we've got a proposal that goes across psychology and across user interface and across this and across that, well, who's going to fund it, David? That would be the fundamental question. Who's going to pay in order to work? Maybe it's just us. Maybe other universities would be interested to hear from other people after the session. Maybe you guys are all streaks ahead around the world, but we're certainly not. We're very much siloed thinking. We sit within it. So my recent experience was around a project, extracurricular project that we did. I love rockets. Rockets are cool. And an academic in civil engineering put a bid into our university, said he wanted to put a rocket in space, and he wanted £5,000, so about $6,000-8,000 in order to do it. Got the money, and then was like, oh, right, I better actually do this now. Got put in touch with me because my office is covered in rocketry trivia and live rockets and that kind of thing, which I think worries my colleagues slightly, but they let me get away with it. And I had to first of all break the news to him. He was like, £5,000, we can get into space. I was like, no, no, we can't. We can get to the car park for that. But we'll go on. So the reason why, and I'll just show you how into rockets I've been. This is my first ever rocket recovered. I think I look the same now as I did then, pretty much. Maybe a little thinner on top, who knows. And I've spent a long time messing around with amateur rockets, set fire to fields, blown things up by accident, sometimes on purpose. So this was my kind of area of enthusiasm, okay? So this wasn't my day-to-day work, but it was something that I was genuinely enthusiastic with. And what we decided was we decided on a number of work packages, and what was achievable while we were building a rocket engine that we're still building, while we were constructing aerodynamic bodies, which we are still doing, was we could do high-altitude ballooning. We could test telemetry systems, we could fly something up to around 30 kilometers, 20 miles up, and actually test real live radio. And we could do that within the budget, so it would be an achievable outcome that we could do it. So we started deciding, well, we're going to have this rocket project and we're going to put some high altitude balloons up, and we're trying to get students interested in it. And I wasn't sure how well it would go because we weren't offering any academic credit. We weren't offering any time off classes. We were offering them the option to come in and do work for free when they didn't have to. And I was in two minds about whether this would actually work. What it turns out, though, is our students are brilliant. And if you give them something that sounds interesting, they will bite your hand off. When I email them and say, would you like to come in and do computer science for free over the summer? No, they're not so interested. When I say, do you want to come in, build a rocket, launch balloons, do this, they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's good. So we had a self-selecting group of incredibly talented and brilliant students from computer science, mechanical aero, physics, you name it. So there's me and there's a civil engineer, And suddenly we have this brain trust of students have arrived who actually know far more about rocket science than I ever do. They know about mechanical engineering, they know about these things. And I'd never met them before, I'd never come across it, and we're having discussions where they're solving problems I hadn't even thought that we had. The other thing that came out of this was a question about resources. So I work in a university. This is an overhead view of near my office in Belfast. You can see cars for scale. And my office at the time was just there. Now I was building these things, so we want to do electronics, we want to do ballooning, we want to do aerodynamic testing, we want to do all this sort of stuff, and I had no idea what else was in the university. Just by asking the question, just by having these students come and see me, I found that there were gas handling facilities that I could see out of my window. We had 2 wind tunnels, not 1 but 2. Light fabrication, fuel pouring and setting facilities and testing, prototyping labs. We had PCB printing facilities, radio receivers on the roof, and a heavy fabrication lab, including a 7-axis machine that looks like something out of Terminator that will literally grind rocket nozzles out of solid steel. I had no idea. I am here, happily for a year, utterly unaware of all of these people, all of these resources, all of these facilities, all of this knowledge, because we didn't work interdisciplinary. Because without this project to give me a kick to go and see them, without something to put us in touch, without the students saying, well, yeah, hang on a minute, my professor has knowledge in this, and we're like, oh, who's that? We never would have realized it. I'd have just carried on at maximal ignorance quite happily. So we got loads of resources. We got wind tunnels, fabrication, pouring facilities, lathes, laser cutters, 3D powder printers, all this stuff. And it's great because you go and see people in academia and you say, hello, can you help me with a project? And they go, no. And then you go, it's rocket related. And they're like, yes, of course I can. How can we help? Again, people are interested when you go and see them, when you engage them. And they're like, we had no idea that this was going on. Well, I didn't know you existed until tomorrow. Isn't this great? Let's try and build on these relationships. So it turns out, outside of any hierarchy, I was pretty ignorant about what was happening. We needed lots of stuff done. We got it done. We got things validated. We got chemicals made. We got gas calculations done, fillers. We got the engineering department to give us the kind of gas stuff and teach me how not to blow my hands off when I was trying to fill stuff with high pressure helium. All of this really useful stuff that if I hadn't known, I would have just tightened it and hoped for the best. It wouldn't have ended very well. And it worked. We ended up filling balloons. That is Northern Ireland on one sunny day. Setting up live transmissions and tracking data down in real time from flight payloads. And ultimately, we got up to the edge of space. Got some lovely pictures.
How high was
it? About 30 kilometers, 20 miles. So we had a good time. It was excellent. I enjoyed it. We all enjoyed it. But the critical thing really for me was that working with the students from the other schools, the students I didn't know, was one of the best bits. And what was really doubly interesting for me was that my students enjoyed that as well. So we had computer science students come in who knew me, right? They were like, oh, him again, okay. And we were meeting people who had diverse interests, fascinating people, electronic engineers, aerospace engineers, all of this kind of stuff. Now, we could have tried to do it without knowledge from our domain. We could have tried to do it, but it wouldn't have worked, and we certainly wouldn't be as far along on our process as we are now. And on the back of this project, on the back of our rocketry project, which I'll talk about in a minute of how that's progressing, we have several other collaborations with schools that are research faculty-led, because I met people I had no idea existed. I found facilities that I didn't know worked, and I'm forging relationships with people, finding synergies in the work we're doing. We chat to civil engineers about rockets, and they suddenly said to us, do you know anything about drones? And we're like, yes, we love drones, right? We know about it. Oh, we've just bought a load of drones. We want to do mapping of buildings, but we need software in order to do it. Do you know what software is? Come and have a seat. So we found these relationships by projects that forced the discussion to start happening. So the students carried on the work. We did our ballooning project. They formed groups, they formed teams, there's student societies. They are now streaking ahead. We have printed parts of Rockets, we tested our first engine the other week, which blew up, but that's by the by, it was quite impressive. We've had some very interesting discussions with our insurance company about, how do we give our public liabilities insurance for this, and we found a quarry that we're hoping to set fire to in the upcoming future. So this has all been going really well. The students are carrying on. We've had various events since. We've just done another round of ballooning. Okay, so I have been enthused by this, the students have been enthused by this, and this one project that started off and was extracurricular and probably a faff for everyone involved actually has sprouted wings. So we've tried all this stuff. I have previously tried to do interdisciplinary working through a formal academic structure. I've talked to colleagues, for example, in business schools and things like that, and we've said, look, we've got computer scientists, you've got business students, why don't we try and do projects where your guys come up with the idea and the rationale and our people will implement it and all of this, trying to get timelines, rubrics, hand-ins, all of that aligned has been so far insurmountable. Yet the ability and the freedom that an extracurricular project gave us allowed us to do that, allowed us to get together, allowed us to break those barriers down and come in order to do it. So basically that is my plea to universities everywhere, to educators. Let's try and break down the barriers. I encourage you to go and see the other departments because other people are just as cool as you are and they're interested in projects, we're interested in doing things. You will be surprised, as I was, how quickly that chemists, mathematicians, aerospace engineers, mechanical engineers all fall together, and it's very, very beneficial for the students, absolutely, for the staff, even more so. And that is all I wanted to say, so thank you very much.